Ignore the Dementor, a Harry Potter fanfiction written by NinjaPandaScholar, read by Coul. On a side note, fuck the turf that created this masterpiece. Chapter 7. The HSMC. Oh hell, what's he doing here? A familiar voice indignantly drawled from the corner of the room, making Harry instinctively go on guard and prepare for a fight. Malfoy? Harry asked in resignation. Of course Malfoy was a member. Shut it, Draco. You know the rules. A tall, dark-skinned Slytherin berated the blonde before walking over to Harry. Harry recognized the teen as a member of the Slytherin Quidditch team, a 7th-year chaser, if he remembered correctly. I'm Graham Montag. In case you didn't remember me without my Quidditch robes. The 7th-year smiled as he held out a hand to shake. We all go by first names here in the club, so call me Graham. Harry, the Dementor said with a shaky smile as he shook the older teen's hand and did his best to forget that this Slytherin was known for his violent fouls on the Quidditch pitch. Harry! An excited male voice called out before the Gryffindor was slammed into and the taller student suddenly was hugging him from behind. Harry repressed a flinch and wriggled around to see who was trapping him in a bear hug. Neville? He asked in surprised disbelief. Wow, you're really cold! Neville finally let go of him and continued talking quickly, like he was on a sugar high. Hey, what are you doing here? This is awesome! We needed another 5th year in the club. Oh wait, Professor Lupin didn't bite you, did he? No, definitely no. Harry vehemently assured him, not wanting anyone to get Remus in trouble. I'm not a werewolf. Neville, remember the rules. Graham frowned and kindly grabbed the excited Gryffindor by the shoulders and passed him off to Draco. No asking what our new member is. Neville immediately wrapped his arms around a resigned Draco Malfoy, who glared at Harry like he was daring him to say something about it. Sorry, Harry. Neville smiled sheepishly from Malfoy's shoulder. This is bloody ridiculous. Malfoy growled out in frustration and jabbed a finger towards Harry. You'd better stick to the rules, Potter. We don't take kindly to those who don't take the society seriously here. Harry, Luna reminded him. Fine. Harry. Malfoy crossed his arms, ignoring the Gryffindor draped over his shoulders like he wasn't even here. Glancing around the room, no one seemed to think that Neville hanging off of Malfoy was surprising or even worth a glance up from their other conversations, books or chess games they were currently involved in. It was the most comfortable classroom Harry had ever seen, with armchairs, couches, bookshelves filled with books, snacks on a low table, and many board games options. A couple people looked up and smiled at Harry, but mostly he was quietly accepted into the room without much comment. Until, well, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, Severus Snape commented dryly as he entered the room and sat in a dark armchair that seemed to be reserved for him in the corner. Did the wolf bite you over the summer? He threw on at the end with a sneer. No! Harry ran his hands through his hair in exasperation. Luna said no one was going to ask me what I am. That's the 2nd time I've been asked if I'm a werewolf. I'm not! Snape shrugged at Harry's outbursts. Werewolves are a special case. We have a buddy system for them. Someone to cover for them in their classes and make sure they get their wolfsbane at the full moon. So we do ask about them specifically. he explained in a surprisingly neutral tone. He really didn't mean any offense, an auburn-haired, third-year Hufflepuff girl with amber eyes remarked. My twin brother and I are half werewolves, she mentioned to a Ravenclaw who was reading a large textbook and taking notes. The boy looked up from his book and smiled. I'm Aurelius, and my sister is Aurora, he said by a way of greeting. Yes, we have some of the heightened senses of werewolves, but none of the transformations and all the same discrimination. Aurora continued with a kind smile. We're out to our houses, though, so most people know what we are. There are usually 2 or 3 magical creatures on average in each year at Hogwarts, Luna explained next. We currently have 17 members, 18 with you. Esseline is the only first year right now, but we probably will be finding another first year or 2 this term. A tiny first year Slytherin gave Harry a shy wave. He waved back with a grin at the blonde girl. It's my first meeting too, the first year said quietly. I'm Vila. My whole family is, and my mother was a member of the society when she was at Hogwarts. It's good to meet you, Esseline. Harry shook her hand. Harry turned back to Neville, really wanting to ask what in Cersei's name was going on with him and Malfoy. Sensing his dorm-mate's distress at not being able to ask, Neville smiled and chuckled. I'm a high elf, he explained. We're only very distantly related to house elves. With a flick of his head, Harry dispelled the glamour covering pointed ears, not as dramatically pointed as Luna's, and a faint green tinge to his skin. High elves are very tactile creatures, Luna explained with a dreamy smile on her face. Nev gets a little touch starved throughout the week since it's not considered polite to hold on to people all the time. We encourage him to be himself during our weekly meetings. Graham chuckled. To all of our extensive amusement, Draco is his favorite because of what he is and his aura. Hey! Draco frowned indignantly. I didn't tell him what you are, Graham rolled his eyes, and he obviously knows you're something if you're here. Malfoy glared, but didn't say anything else. It took over a year for Neville to wear him down, the 7th-year Quidditch player stage whispered to Harry. We're just happy Draco gave up on all the complaining eventually. It was highly annoying. Snape drawled from where he had pulled his marking and blood-red ink from out of his bag. Since you will most likely ignore all our rules and invade my privacy, I will save you us both time and inform you that yes, I am an alumnus of this club and was a member when it was. He sneered in distaste. Remedial divination. Harry held back a laugh. From Snape's expression, he was certain his potions master hadn't been able to pass as a tutor. He just nodded though and bit his tongue to keep from asking what the man was. Snape raised an eyebrow in surprise that Harry was able to restrain himself from asking. I'm a vampire, Snape said with a smirk. Celine, welcome to the Hogwarts Society of Magical Creatures. But, Harry, Snape rolled his eyes. Can we change that idiotic rule this year? You were outvoted multiple times, Severus, Luna reminded him with a wide grin. Harry and Esseline both looked between the two, expecting their professor to give detention or take away points. The professor just sneered and went back to his marking though. Guys! An excited voice was yelling as 2 brown-headed boys ran into the room. I found my mate! There was a collective groan. all around the room, and several eye rolls. Harry looked on in surprise as Colin Creevy, followed by his little brother Dennis, ran in. "This happens at least once a month," Neville remarked to Harry in explanation. "We've told you 1,000 times, Colin. No one finds their mate until their magical maturity at 17. A tall blonde Hufflepuff responded in exasperation. Harry thought the boy was probably a 6th or 7th year, but didn't remember seeing him around much. The Hufflepuff continued, "I'll find my mate this year, but you still have about 3 years. Yes, we're all bracing ourselves for the upcoming drama, Matthew." Aurelius smirked at the 7th year over his notes. Snape sighed deeply. "Why I took over the society from Phileas is beyond me. I must have taken leave of my senses. If it isn't teenage hormones, it's magical creature hormones," he remarked to himself, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Harry!" Colin gasped out in surprise when he finally realized who was in the room. "What are you doing here?" Apparently I'm a member now," Harry shrugged. "Colin, I thought you were Muggle-born?" "We're druids," Dennis answered for his still stunned brother. "Not all druids have magic. Our parents don't, so we're listed as Muggle-borns." "Oh, so who do you think your mate is?" Harry asked Colin. "Do all magical creatures have mates?" "Not all do," Graham answered before Colin could get swept up in explaining how perfect he believed his newest potential mate would be. "Only a few have mates that are chosen for them by magic, like magical druids, Velas, sirens, and a few others. Many others have mates, but they just pick who they want their mate to be, like vampires, werewolves, Valkyries, fairies, elves, and so on." "Wow, I have a lot to learn," Harry remarked as Snape snorted in agreement at the statement, not even looking up from the parchment he was marking. "Okay, Colin, who is it this time?" Neville asked from where he was. He and Malfoy were sitting now together on a couch. "Ginny Weasley!" Colin was almost jumping up and down in his excitement. "She's gorgeous! Her hair is like sunshine and her eyes are as blue as the sky." Mate, I think she's dating Michael Corner." Harry winked in sympathy. Colin visibly deflated, and his brother patted him on the back comfortingly. "Merlin, Colin." Malfoy sighed in exasperation. "It'll probably end between them in a couple months anyway. Mate or not, ask her out if you're interested. It's not like you're going to marry someone before you turn 17. You can always break up if you find out someone else is your mate. Or just break the mate bond if you don't like your mate. It's not pleasant, but not impossible either." Colin frowned. That's strange advice coming from a... Colin was suddenly unable to talk as Neville lowered his wand. "Draco doesn't want Harry to know what he is yet," the older Gryffindor explained, while Colin silently pouted. "I'll tell him after he tells me what he is, and not before." Malfoy glared at Harry in a challenge. Harry just shuffled his feet. I'm not quite well." "It's okay, Harry." Montag saved him from his awkwardness. "Draco didn't tell anyone what he was for over a year, and I'm still not really sure what Hestia is over there." A 6th-year Ravenclaw girl with dark hair smirked at Graham and threw up a rude hand gesture. "Children." 5 points from Ravenclaw. Snape drawled still not looking up from barking. "You do realize this changes nothing outside this room." "Harry!" Draco raised an eyebrow at the new club member. I still don't like you, and Montag is going to lead Slytherin into slaughtering Gryffindor in Quidditch this year. And Draco will, as usual, insult my potion skills and intelligence. Neville laughed with a grin. So, we don't do any potions in remedial potions, Harry clarified with a relieved grin. Severus insists on giving a lecture once a month, a second-year Gryffindor girl remarked with a distasteful wrinkle of her nose. Oh, hi, Air. I didn't see you. Harry grinned at the girl he talked to a couple times the year before in the common room. She had a wicked sense of humor and was quite bright for her age. She smiled and nodded at him before rejoining a Gobstones game with a fourth-year Slytherin girl. Where are Brooke and David? Snape finally looked up questioningly, but with also a strange resignation in his eyes. No one answered him, and they all looked around a little sheepishly. Draco smirked at his head of house, probably in a broom cupboard somewhere. Snape sighed and stood with a glare towards Draco. Don't kill each other while I'm gone, he sneered before leaving. Harry sat beside Luna on a couch and turned to Neville and Draco. So, how does this work outside of the club? Weren't you afraid of Snape, Neville? Severus, Luna corrected as everyone seemed to settle into their normal activities. A few dispelled glamours like Neville had. Luna's ears were showing, but her wings were still covered. Colin and Dennis both looked like they had dark druidic tattoos that were visible on their necks and arms, and the first-year Vila had large black feathery wings out that she was stretching. Yeah, the first name thing is just weird. Harry shook his head and settled into the atmosphere. It was happy, but also calming, much more calming than making him hungry. It was a very pleasant feeling. After the boggart incident in third year, Severus sat me down and explained his treatment of me and some things about potions and high elves in particular. Neville explained. It cleared up a lot between us. I'm never going to be good at potions, and we decided it was an acceptable area for him to pick at me to maintain our covers in the school. I mean, if we suddenly started to get along with my abysmal potion skills, then everyone would be talking, right? Neville is scary good at magic, but high elves just can't do potions. Draco clarified to Harry's shock. He thought he'd die before seeing Malfoy defend Neville to anyone, let alone himself. High elves need to touch things to connect their magic with it. It's inadvisable to put your hand into a boiling potion. And just by cutting up my ingredients, I changed their properties, Neville explained with a nod. Not all high elves have wizarding magic, but they do have their own brand of elf magic. Draco continued the explanation. Neville is powerful because he can do both. The Gryffindor turned pink and shrugged. My parents could too, but Gran thought it might have skipped over me. But that's why I'm good at herbology. I can touch the plants. Harry shook his head in amazement. I feel like my whole view of the world is changing, but I definitely think I like the world better than I did a few hours ago. Don't worry, Potter. It'll all go back to normal once we leave this room. Draco smirked evilly. Harry! Graham called out in admonition from where he was helping a third-year boy with his homework. Harry jabbed his thumb over his shoulder at Graham. Montag is helping someone with their homework, and not trying to kill me is enough to throw me for a loop, not even taking into account whatever's going on here. Harry motioned to the Draco-Neville situation. You get used to it. Luna shrugged and leaned against Harry, causing him to smile broadly at her. Draco raised an eyebrow at them, but didn't say anything. And 20 points from Hufflepuff for making my eyes bleed. Snape was ranting as he pushed 2 sixth years into the room. Merlin, you're too young for this. Or I'm too old to have to put up with it. Your species aren't even supposed to like each other. Sorry, Severus, a boy remarked as they both scuttled into the room and joined a giggling group in the corner. Now, Harry, Malfoy began with an eye roll at the name. What in Salazar's name did you do to the unicorns? Harry glared at the memory. The bloody menaces, he fumed. They started it. So, how was your first meeting? Neville asked as he walked with Harry back to Gryffindor Tower after remedial potions, thankfully timing it right so they didn't have to walk with the overexcitable duo of Colin and Dennis Creevy. Harry knew it was strange that he now thought Neville looked odd when he wasn't slightly green with pointed ears, even though that's how he'd seen him for over 4 years previously. Brilliant! Harry grinned at him happily. He hadn't been truly happy in a long time, or felt safe, and for some reason the club made him feel both. He could see why having a safe space for magical creatures in a school that was set to discriminate against them was necessary. I can't get over Snape and Malfoy, but I suppose we're all hiding who we are in some way from the rest of the school. They just got about it differently than I would. I still fully expect Malfoy to hex me in the corridors the next chance he gets. Neville punched Harry's arm playfully. Well, I'm happy to have someone else in the dorm to go with. It's been a little lonely the past 4 years. Hey, mate, if you ever need a hug or a cuddle or something, Harry offered awkwardly as he looked at everything except of Neville. Neville laughed good-humouredly. Yeah, I hugged you once today, and I can't already tell you that would be counterproductive. Well, whatever you are, it's like the anti-elf. You just keep your hands to yourself. Yeah, well, whatever I am, I'm fairly positive curiosity can kill me. Harry grinned. I'm dying to know what Malfoy is, and why you want to hang around him. I'm not asking, though. He added on quickly at the end. By sitting between the two of you tonight, my guess is the opposite of you. By sitting between the two of you tonight, my guess is the opposite of you. Neville smiled and gave the portrait a password to enter the tower. Huh. Harry thought about that, wondering what the opposite of a Dementor was. He had been fairly certain that would be a unicorn. After their disastrous meeting, maybe Malfoy was something close to them. That seemed incredibly unlikely, though. Now you just need to explain to Ron and Hermione how you got roped into remedial potions. Neville smirked at Harry, who groaned in distress. Harry was getting low on essence of Murtlap. Umbridge's detentions hadn't gotten any better. And she always found a reason to give him a detention, even if she had to make it up. More importantly than this, his wounded hand, Harry was worried that he couldn't keep his Dementor instinct in check if he didn't have the excuse of the healing potion to quell his anger at her for hurting Jamie. The Dementor side of him seemed much more ruthless than the normal Harry side of him from before. Hermione had been on him, surprisingly supported by Ron and Luna, to lead a Defense Against the Dark Arts study group. After cutting "I must not tell lies" into his hand over 50 times in his third detention, Harry decided he was in, even if it was just to stick it to Umbridge. It was a side benefit that students would be learning something in his opinion, so he spent the rest of detention focusing on how to start the new club, and how to convince Snape to give him more of the healing cream. He figured that Hermione or Luna might be able to brew it or if he were desperate, maybe he could talk to Malfoy at the next remedial potions meeting. The scary part of being injured was that he was getting hungrier. It seemed his Dementor craved more to eat when he was in pain. Harry hadn't lied to Dobby though. He was skimming some of the happiness from the classmates at dinner unnoticeably to anyone around him. And he hadn't killed either Umbridge or Binns yet. It was a small victory, but he was quite proud of himself all the same. He realized something was different in his personality. He felt freer and like a weight had been lifted from his mind. So even if he seemed to care much less what people thought about him, he was happier than he had been in his memory. And that led him to worry less about the changes he seemed to be undergoing and just enjoy it more. "First Hogsmeade weekend," Harry told Hermione when he had her open the almost empty jar that evening. "We'll gather people together and talk strategy for the Dada Club then." "You're in?" Hermione almost squealed in joy. Harry rolled his eyes towards Ron as they laughed at their overly excited friend. "Sure, whatever. Hey, do you think you can help me with some more of this stuff?" "Help me make some more of this stuff?" he asked, motioning to the jar. "Already on it," Hermione remarked, causing Harry to hug her to her surprise. Thank you, thank you," he sighed in immense relief. "I still haven't figured out how to get her out of the school, so it's the least I can do." Hermione frowned in anger at the teacher who was torturing her friend. "I'll talk to the twins about spreading the word about the club," Ron said as he stood to go find his brothers. I'll tell Luna next time I see her." Harry nodded. "Why anyone would want to listen to me is beyond my understanding, though." "Oh, Harry!" Hermione sighed and rubbed the cream onto his hand. "You'll see, I think you'll be a great teacher." Harry shrugged and examined his hand. It didn't look as good as it usually did after the cream. It wasn't healing as well. "Yeah, we'll see," was all he said as he frowned at the bloody words. October was always one of Harry's favorite months. Hogsmeade weekend started, Quidditch games began again, and his new classes settled in. If it wasn't for the bloody cursed day of October 31st. Then the month would be the absolute best. This year, Quidditch was what Harry was looking forward to the most, and he for once didn't mean playing. It was an easy opportunity for the Dementor to eat. He understood completely why the horde of Dementors crashed the game in his third year now. They had to have had much less access to their food source than he did living in the school, and it was an opportunity to eat and not affect any of the students. If only there had been less of them, and they hadn't been so focused on him, then he could almost forgive them for their impulse. As October finally dawned, Harry had also settled into a new routine. He spent his nights with Hedwig and sometimes Dobby for company, either studying up on the magical creatures or exploring the Forbidden Forest or castle. He loved roaming the hallways invisibly. He couldn't resist making faces at the patrolling professors or prefects on occasion, but mostly he stayed away from people. Umbridge was as evil as always, well, getting eviler in his opinion. Hermione finished a new healing cream just before he ran out of Snape's supply, but it wasn't working as well as it had originally. Hermione's guess was because it was a cursed object he was using. The Hogwarts Society of Magical Creatures, aka the HSMC, or remedial potions was helping temper his nastier Dementor instincts though. Something about being an alpha predator didn't do positive things for his anger issues. Knowing he wasn't the only one struggling was far more helpful than any meditation or calming strategy though. He had looked all the magical creatures he had been told about in the club, especially vampires. Know your enemy and all. Defense against the dark arts had focused on werewolves, so it was the first time Harry had really looked into vampires. It seemed vampirism wasn't a really big deal, unlike in the movies Dudleys liked to watch. They couldn't handle direct sunlight for extreme periods of time, and had enhanced senses and strength were much more inclined to mind magic, but they weren't immortal and could be killed, though not by garlic. They could also eat normal food when they needed blood to survive, even if they needed blood to survive. Celine and Matthew, the 7th year stressing over finding his mate, were both Vila, but he actually knew quite a bit about Vila from meeting and talking to Fleur the year before. Druids were much more inclined to ritual magic and had longer lifespans than a normal wizard. High elves were gifted in all earth magic, and fairies were connected to magic itself, as Luna had already explained. He didn't know what anyone else was, though, besides the half-werewolves, and he really had been trying to figure out what the hell Malfoy could be. Harry's first instinct was a Vila with Malfoy's white blonde hair, but Neville didn't have the same reaction to Celine or Matthew that he did to Malfoy. He also hadn't seen Malfoy do anything out of the ordinary besides be nice to people. Montag was another mystery. After seeing the chaser in remedial potions, Harry was certain that whatever he was had significantly increased strength since he picked up the couch with 2 third years sitting on it one day. Thinking back on all the fouls in Quidditch, Montag wasn't using any of that strength in the pitch though. As sturdy as he played, he was holding back a lot. Harry was pondering over what the other members of the club could be, as he stowed his book bag in the dorm on a Thursday in early October. He was about to head down to the club meeting with Neville, which Neville had already left for. Harry was dragging his feet because he was expecting a letter back from Sirius at any time, and he was hoping Hedwig would make it back soon. He missed his feathery midnight buddy. Just as he gave up, a ball of red and white feathers fell through the open window of the tower. "Hedwig!" Harry yelled out in a frantic dread. No. He rushed over, taking the red blood, staining the pure whites of his friend's feathers. She gave him an exhausted hoot and seemed to pull herself into herself more. Automatically, Harry pulled the leather off her leg, shoved it in his pocket, before grabbing a discarded towel to wrap gently around her. "Stay with me, Hedwig, I'm going to get you help." Harry sobbed out, staving off panic to try to think clearly. He couldn't handle anything happening to his first and best friend. Who could he go for help? Professor Grubbly-Plank seemed to be the obvious choice, but he didn't know her and didn't trust her. Plus, he didn't know where she would be on a Thursday evening, or even if she lived in the castle. Not all the professors did. He couldn't chance having to search over the entire castle looking for her, and even looking over the Marauders map would eat up precious time. Harry took a deep breath. Someone in the HSMC would be able to help, he decided. Between all the magical creatures, one of them would have some connection to healing magic. If not, Professor Snape might have a potion. Needing to go quickly, Harry, for the first time, wrapped his shadow magic around Jamie, surprised it actually worked in his Harry suit. He rushed out of the tower and ran all the way to the dungeons and the meeting room of the secret society. "Help!" Harry called out through tears as he rushed into the room, visible once again. It's Hedwig! She's injured! Please, can any of you help?" Everyone seemed to be already in the room and chatting, working on homework or playing games. They all looked up in surprise when the distraught teen rushed in, carrying a bloody bundle in his arms. "Put her here, Harry!" Neville motioned to the low table in front of him as he jumped up and took charge. "David, help him," Snape instructed from where he was sitting in his normal armchair. A 6th-year Hufflepuff rushed over to join Neville as the High Elf slowly unwrapped the towel. "Oh, Hedwig!" Neville sighed, and he really liked Harry's owl and fed her bacon most mornings when she visited their table at the Great Hall. "Nev, if you can stabilize her, I can heal her," David the Hufflepuff instructed as he ran a finger over Hedwig's feathers, causing her to hoot softly. "The injuries aren't deep." "I'm on it," Neville said as he closed his eyes and placed a pale green hand over Hedwig's head. "Harry." David took hold of the Dementor's shoulders comfortingly, and turned forest green eyes on him. "I'm a Druze, a male dryad. That means my magic is connected to nature and those who call forests home, like Hedwig. May I heal your owl?" The Dementor breathed out a sigh of relief and hugged the teen as he had only just met a few weeks before. "Yes, please! Thank you, thank you, thank you!" He pulled back quickly and motioned to Hedwig in concern. Harry saw David and Neville's aura both flare. Neville's was a calm orange tinted color and David's was as green as his eyes. Neville pulled back first and gave Harry a reassuring smile. David's hand replaced Neville's and a sigh of relief seemed to come from everyone in the room when the gashes on Hedwig's torso slowly closed. Hedwig happily hooted and ruffled her feathers when the Druze opened his eyes and tiredly smiled. "Hedwig, I was so scared." Harry cooed and rubbed her feathers soothingly, picking out those that had come out of place. "Never scare me like that again. I love you so much." Harry turned to David, who had been joined by Brooke, his girlfriend. "Anything you need, and I mean anything," Harry told him seriously. "You just ask. You too, Neville." Harry smiled at his dormmate. "I'd hug you, but you said I'm the anti-elf, so I'll keep my hands to myself." "Yeah, you're the anti-dryad as well." David smirked at him. "I'm good with no more hugs, and you're welcome. I'm just glad I could help." "Well, I see this is a good day for a lecture on healing potions that can be used on animals." Snape stood and cleared his throat. Everyone, even Malfoy, groaned at that, but Harry could only smile at Hedwig. That Hedwig was fine again. "You okay?" Luna asked him quietly. Harry's smile fell as it sunk in now that the panic was gone. "I'm going to kill her!" he shouted, causing everyone to jump. He stood and rushed towards the door before Luna grabbed him by the waist to stop him. "Who, may I ask, are you planning to murder, Mr. Potter?" the potions professor asked with a very wary look on his face. He really didn't know what Harry was and didn't want to take any chances. "Umbridge!" the Dementor growled as the room's temperature dropped a few degrees. "Who else would be screening my mail and would attack Hedwig?" "I hope you're ready to call Azkaban your home for a very long time then," Snape drawled as he moved slightly to block the door. Though Snape didn't know it, his words reminded Harry of just how much he didn't want to be exiled to guard Azkaban for the rest of his life. He knew he couldn't be incarcerated, but made to guard the prison was just as bad in his opinion. It was trapped It was trapped one way or the other. "Calm down, Harry," Luna said, rubbing her hand soothingly up and down his arm. "You don't know for certain it was her, and Hedwig is fine now." Harry breathed in and out deeply, reminding himself that he was morally against causing harms to others and pushing down his Dementor impulses. "You're doing so good, Harry," Luna remarked calmly. "You aren't your new instincts. You're stronger than they are." Snape raised a questioning eyebrow at that, but didn't ask. "Sit down, Harry," he said in what could pass for a kind tone for Snape anyway. "Listen to Luna and look after your owl." Hedwig hooted from the table she had perched on. Harry finally calmed enough to sit between her and Luna, pulling his aura back in, more to raise the room's temperature. I'm sorry," he mumbled to the room in general. "Oh, please, we've all lost it a time or two. You at least didn't destroy the room like Cara did last year," Montag remarked dismissively, while everyone settled back down, and the fourth-year Slytherin girl mentioned gave the chaser a disapproving glare. "Creature emotions tend to run high." "Indeed. Right now, take notes. There are 5 good healing potions that will work for humans and animals," Snape began in his lecturing tone. "From what we've already know, the HSMC characters and what Harry, for what we know currently knows. Severus Snape, the sponsor head of the house, is a vampire. Graham Montag, 7th year Slytherin, unknown. Matthew Bastine, 7th year Hufflepuff, Vila. Hestia Talon, 6th year Ravenclaw, unknown. Brooke Bay, 6th year Hufflepuff, unknown. David Birch, 6th year Hufflepuff, Droost, a male dryad. Harry Potter, 5th year Gryffindor, a Dementor. Neville Longbottom, 5th year Gryffindor, High Elf. Draco Malfoy, 5th year Slytherin, unknown. Luna Lovegood, 4th year Ravenclaw, a fairy. Colin Creevy, 4th year Gryffindor, a druid. Cara Brynhilde, 4th year Slytherin, unknown. Aurora Jones, 3rd year Hufflepuff, half werewolf. Aurelius Jones, 3rd year Hufflepuff, half werewolf. Bartholomew Beadle, 3rd year Ravenclaw, unknown. Dennis Creevy, 2nd year Gryffindor, druid. Herja, 2nd year Gryffindor, unknown. Esteline Hyssop, 1st year Slytherin. Vila. Chapter 8. Don't poke the Dementor. Harry stayed with Hedwig the entire night after her attack. He followed her throughout the Forbidden Forest as she hunted and flew around. Nothing in the forest would dare to challenge a Dementor, so he knew if any of the larger, nastier creatures decided to try out Owl for dinner, he would be there to protect her. Unfortunately, he did have to keep his aura firmly pulled in, or he would scare off the mice Hedwig was stalking. He was sick and tired of being cold all the time, but it was worth it to watch over his best friend. After picking up Jamie the next morning, Harry realized the soulless body wasn't in the state of good health he had been tirelessly trying to get it to for months. Jamie felt heavier than normal and almost feverish. Normally, Harry wouldn't feed from his classmates at breakfast because he didn't want them starting off the day with a lower mood, but he had to that morning. Already he knew that it was going to be a rough day. Ron and Hermione grimaced at him worriedly across the breakfast table while he pulled his scarf closer around his neck and blew on his hand. It might be early October, but it felt like January in the dungeons to Harry. Harry's sour mood turned slightly better when the owls flew in with the post. "Oh, I completely forgot." Harry smiled at his two friends and pulled the letter Hedwig had brought him the night before put out of his pocket. It had passed the sniff test that morning to be worn again. Quickly he pulled it out of the envelope with a small red stain on it that Harry couldn't bear to look at for a second longer. "What's that, Harry?" Hermione asked, putting another scoop of eggs onto Harry's plate with concern in her eyes. A letter from Snuffles." The Dementor smiled wistfully after reading it. He passed it to his friends, who read the cramped scribbles of Harry's godfather. "Harry, I hear you have a Hogsmeade weekend coming up. If you haven't checked out Mooney's old hangout yet, you really should. It's a good place to go to enjoy a butterbeer and a couple of chocolate frogs. Let me know how you are doing. Snuffles." "Is he saying what I think he is?" Hermione frowned. "That's way too dangerous." Harry shook his head in exasperation. They just didn't understand. He only did that because he had felt the emotions rolling off of his godfather in dark, depressive waves. "Hermione, that house is slowly killing him. If he doesn't get out, it'll do what Azkaban couldn't. I'll make sure he's safe," Harry assured her in a whisper. "Sometimes the safest option isn't the healthiest." Hermione frowned, but couldn't seem to come up with another argument. Ron shrugged and handed the letter back. "Just don't forget the meeting for Dada," he reminded. "The twins have spread the word to most Gryffindors already." Harry sighed, still not thinking it'd be the best idea if he was the chosen to lead it. "Sure, I'll do that first and then head to see Snuffles." "Fine," Hermione said thinly, looking a lot like McGonagall in a disapproving way. "We need to head to Care of Magical Creatures now anyway." The Dementor groaned as Ron came to the other side of the table and dramatically pulled him off his feet and pushed him towards the door. Please no unicorns," he asked the universe, while Ron continued to leave him out of the entrance, chuckling the whole way. Mr. Potter," a silky voice stopped Harry as he was walking through the entrance hall of the castle, giving him a strong sense of déjà vu. "This seems to be becoming a pattern. What, may I ask, happened this time?" Snape frowned and crossed his arms sternly from a dark alcove Harry had just passed. Did the man hang out there during his free periods to catch students sneaking around? Harry wondered. Harry sighed as he dabbed at the shallow cuts on his face with a handkerchief he had borrowed from Neville. "I don't want to talk about it." He shrugged awkwardly and avoided eye contact with the vampire. "It seems you are as abysmal at care of magical creatures as Mr. Longbottom is at potions," Snape remarked with a question in there somewhere. Harry recognized what he was asking. He wanted to know if his accident in the care of magical creature had something to do with whatever creature he was. "Yes, sir. I think I'm just as bad as Neville." Harry rolled his eyes as he continued to try to stop the bleeding. "I still have some essence of myrtlap. May I go back to my dorm now, sir?" Harry asked with a sneer at the end. "Not until you tell me what happened." The potions professor glared at him warningly, promising points deduction if he didn't cut the attitude. Harry shuffled his feet in embarrassment. This time it was his fault. Well, it was the Dementor's fault, really, but He was the Dementor, so he gave a long, suffering sigh. I got into a fight with a Niffler, sir. He finally ground out, looking at the floor. Harry glanced up in surprise at the emotion rolling off of Snape. He expected to see the man rolling in laughter, but his face betrayed no emotion whatsoever. It's not funny. Harry glared at the man, answering the emotions instead of the expression. It tried to take my locket. It's mine. The Dementor sneered darkly at the end, touching the locket hanging from his neck protectively. The humour continued to roll off Snape with a little confusion as well, probably because the teen had detected the emotion when he was so good at hiding them. Much as I feel it's important to protect priceless artifacts, I'm certain Professor Grubblypink would have retrieved the necklace for you without a fight ensuing. Snape remarked dryly, but Harry recognized the repressed laughter. May I ask, after the health of the Niffler? The teen sneered at the thought of that evil, furry gremlin. Sadly, he's still alive. Harry remarked dangerously. He'll think twice about taking other people's shiny things, though. Snape raised an eyebrow in surprise. You must watch yourself or people will begin to ask questions, he warned. Harry Potter is the noble Gryffindor. He would never attack a small, defenseless creature. Harry motioned to the scratches still bleeding on his face. Defenseless, my arse, he explained unrepentantly. Language. 5 points from Gryffindor. Snape sighed in exasperation. My point still stands. And you need to see Madame Pomfrey. Nifflers aren't known to be very hygienic. Harry shook his head frantically. No, he hissed out slowly so only someone with vampire hearing could hear him. She'll find out. Snape rolled his eyes and physically turned the teen towards the hospital wing. How do you think we find the members for remedial potions? The vampire remarked. Madame Pomfrey's an alumna. She may find out, but if you mention your remedial potions, she'll keep your secret, as she does everyone in this society. Wait, really? Harry sighed in relief. He inevitably ended up in the hospital wing every year. He figured his luck would run out eventually, and he would have to see her before the end of the year at some point. I have permission to tell all society members that she is a high elf like Neville is, Snape assured him sternly. And Potter, for the sake of secrecy and my sanity, drop care of magical creatures after OWLs. Yes, sir, happily. Harry beamed at him before rushing up the stairs before the professor could stop him again. Even with Snape's reassurance, Harry dodged into a secret passage up another set of stairs and through another passage that put him out at Gryffindor Tower. He wasn't going to chance Madame Pomfrey just yet. Finding out there was a fairy or a vampire in the school was one thing, but a Dementor was a whole other story. He wasn't ready to have that conversation with anyone besides Luna, who he had firmly decided was far more understanding and compassionate than anyone else on the planet. Instead, Harry cleaned the cuts thoroughly in the dorm washroom, as he had learned to do from a very young age, since his relatives could not have cared less when he injured himself, or more likely, Dudley injured him. He then applied Hermione's essence of murtlap, and was relieved to see the scratches completely disappear. Knowing he wasn't welcome back in care of magical creatures, Harry grabbed his book on dark creatures and headed down to the dungeons. Gryffindor towers had too bright of an aura, and the few students who were there on the free periods were too happy for his injured Dementor's sensibilities. To keep himself from drawing attention, he found a nice alcove deep in the dungeons where he could release some of his Dementor aura without anyone noticing that it was colder and more depressing in that small section of already cold dungeon. Feeling warmer and happier than he had all day, Harry smiled as he cracked open the book where he was reading up on how to trap a Dementor in the one chapter they were actually mentioned. In all his reading, Harry's conclusion was that no one really knew or understood Dementors outside of maybe the Department of Mysteries, and they weren't telling anyone what they knew. It didn't help that no one understood the Dementor language. Apparently no one bothered to ask house elves if they did. So in all his research from the Black Library and Hogwarts Library, all Harry had found was that whatever had happened to him seemed completely unprecedented, and probably went against everything anyone knew about Dementors. Dementors ate souls, and they multiplied in mists. They did not suck out a soul to leave it and turn it into a Dementor. Whatever had happened to him, only the Dementors themselves seemed to know. As for how to trap a Dementor, there was a bit of a speculation on that point. From the little information Harry could find, it seemed that Dementors could only be trapped willingly. Harry frowned at anyone willingly being trapped. It seemed that Dementors could enter into magically binding contracts that they had to fulfill, but it must be willingly. If the Dementors were all guarding Azkaban, then they would have to have a contract with the Ministry of Magic, which means the Ministry had to have some way of communication with the Dementors at some point, and there had to be a reason for them to agree. Harry was confused why he wasn't currently trapped at Azkaban then. If all the Dementors were included in the contract, his magic should have pulled him to the prison, right? All this caused him more confusion than clearing anything up. He had to be the strangest Dementor on the planet. If I already weren't a freak, Harry thought wryly. What are you doing here, Potter? A familiar voice asked in a tone somewhere between derision and concern. Hey, Montag. Harry caught himself remembering. Things were drastically different outside remedial potions, and Montag wasn't his friend here. It was too bright in the dorm. Montag frowned and took a step further into the alcove. Harry realized quickly that he hadn't retracted his aura, but the Slytherin didn't seem affected at all, strangely. The seventh year cast the same silencing word Luna had when she first told him of the secret society. Harry, Graham crossed his arms and looked at the younger teen. Have you told anyone what you are? Luna maybe, or Neville. You have to let someone in, or all this secrecy will drive you batty. Harry frowned darkly at the Slytherin. You know I don't believe anything written in the Daily Prophet. You're saner than you have any right to be, Montag assured him, quickly with a sigh. Look, my father's a Death Eater. Harry's eyes widened. He already assumed this, but Montag just coming out and saying it was a whole different matter. Why are you telling me this? Montag slid down the wall to sit on the floor beside the Dementor. My creature genes come from several generations ago. It completely skipped over my father and even his father. He doesn't understand what we go through with the society, or why the society is so important to me. Not that I've told him about the HSMC, mind you, Graham explained as he leaned back against the stone. He comes to every Quidditch match and reads all progress reports sent to him, not because he cares, because he wants to make sure I'm following the path he wants me to be on. So I'm not just hiding what I am from the school, but also my family. I have a feeling you're in a similar situation. From what you've said, my father might be a Death Eater, but I'm not. I don't believe for a minute the Dark Lord will care for and not for magical creatures beyond what he can use them for. I've heard all the propaganda spouted, and nowhere in pureblood supremacy is there a place for magical creatures. So I might act like a Death Eater in training, but I'm really hoping you win. And not because you represent the light, who also has never done anything for us, but because you're one of us now. You understand when others just can't. The two sat in silence for a minute as Harry processed. Luna, he said with a smile at the older man. Luna knows what I am. Dobby, the house elf, does too. Good. Graham nodded and fake-punched Harry's shoulder. Now stop being creepy and hide in alcoves. There's a perfectly good window seat that looks out onto the lake not 5 meters down the corridor. Harry laughed and started gathering up his book. Ah, books on dark creatures. Any guesses to what I am yet? Montag asked in interest as he picked up the book Harry had been reading and passed it to him. Harry shook his head and shrugged. You're strong, powerful, and have an aura that screams steadfastness and immovability, if that makes any sense. Wow, yeah, it does. You can see auras? The Slytherin looked at him in awe and surprise. Harry shrugged again and smiled. Bigfoot? He asked, not able to hold in a chuckle. Montag grimaced and pulled Harry to his feet, ending with another fake shove. Merlin's beard! Where did you come up with that? Hell no. Well, Kyrie? Harry raised an eyebrow, chuckling again. They're only women. Montag threw his arms up in exasperation. Salazar, I'm a gargoyle, you dolt! Harry stopped laughing and stared. Like the statues on the roof of the castle? He asked in surprise. He hadn't read anything on gargoyles. Graham cancelled his silencing word and smirked at Harry. They're carved to look like us. Look me up sometime and read up on Valkyries, or as well for Merlin's sake. We do have a couple in the club and they'd kill you if they ever learn you thought I was one of them. Really? Harry smiled as he ran through the club members in his head, trying to guess. Thanks for the advice. Montag gave him a dismissive wave behind him as he continued in the direction of the Slytherin common room. Feeling much better, Harry made his way down the hallway looking for the window seat. Harry left the Hog's Head pub in a hurry after the interest meeting for the new secret Defense Against the Dark Arts Club. He couldn't believe how many people had turned out. There weren't any Slytherins, but since it was mainly Ron and the Weasley twins spreading the word, that made complete sense. Neville, Luna, Eyre, David, Brooke, Colin, Dennis, Aurora and Aurelius all attended the meeting from the Remedial Potions group. Harry was certain that Eyre would have liked to bring Kara from Slytherin since they were really close, even outside the club, but being the only Slytherin would be daunting for the 4th year. Harry hurried along until he was sure no one could see him, where he was hiding by the Shrieking Shack. Quickly he threw his invisibility cloak over him and snuck into the rundown structure. As expected, a large, shaggy black dog was pasting in what passed as a sitting room in the small building, though it didn't have any furniture that hadn't been destroyed by a werewolf years ago. Padfoot didn't seem to realize he was in the room, surprisingly, so Harry checked that his aura was pulled up completely into himself as magically possible before throwing his cloak off. "Siri!" he yelled. The black dog jumped into the air in surprise before falling over in a throaty canine laugh. The tall, gaunt man suddenly appeared, laughing in his place. "Oh, Merlin, I'm losing my touch!" Sirius barked out in laughter. After a couple more laughs, he stood up and suddenly hugged Harry. "I've missed you, pup." "I've missed you too, Sirius." Harry awkwardly patted his back, praying his aura wasn't unnoticeable as tightly as it was pulled into him. "How's living with the Order going?" he finally asked when the animagus pulled away a huge grin on his face. Sirius wrinkled his nose in disgust. At least the house always has people in it, but no manners. A lot of them. How are you? Any exciting happenings this year so far?" Harry pulled the sleeve over his mangled hand subconsciously and shook his head. "I'm not doing so well in care of magical creatures, but there isn't anything major going on. I made a new friend. Her name is Luna, and she's awesome. You would love her." The former prisoner gave Harry a wolfish smile. "Oh, really? So you like her?" Harry blushed and looked away. "Maybe. I don't know. I just like, I like spending time around her, okay?" "Yeah, pup, that's definitely okay." Sirius laughed and plopped onto the floor, pulling Harry down with him. "So, yeah, these are for you." Harry remembered and pulled out from an enlarged pocket in his robes a couple bottles of butterbeer and a handful of chocolate frog, as requested. "Brilliant!" Sirius was opening a chocolate frog wrapper before they had all hit the floor in his excitement. "I can't convince anyone besides Moony to get me these, and he's been out on some sort of mission for the Order recently." Harry looked at his godfather and got a thought. Here was someone who could help him with a problem that had just come up. "Hey, Padfoot, do you happen to know of a room in the castle large enough for about a dozen or more students to practice magic that can be warded or is secret enough that a certain high inquisitor wouldn't find it?" Sirius choked on the chocolate frog. "Merlin, I'd heard about the ministry rat at Hogwarts from Snivellus, but they made her a high inquisitor? What's wrong with everyone?" Harry threw his hands up in exasperated agreement. "Well, she is, and she isn't teaching defense against the dark art at all. We're starting a secret club to learn it ourselves for OWLs and newts. And obviously to try not to get killed by Voldemort. We don't have a place to do it, though. You know of anything?" Unfortunately, they didn't have a faculty sponsor like remedial potions, so the room had to be one that no one knew about, and in all Harry's wardings at night, he couldn't think of a single one that didn't have prefects or professors patrolling around it. "No, sorry, pup," Sirius said as he sadly opened a bottle of butterbeer and passed the other one to Harry. "You should ask the house elves. They know everything. Do you know where the kitchens are? Wait, what am I asking? Of course you know where the kitchens are." "I do, Dad." Harry smiled happily. "And I know just the house elf to ask for help." "Hey, do you think you could sneak me in the Snuffles to watch the club sometime?" Sirius asked with a manic gleam in his eyes. Harry thought about it. Sirius was a former Auror, so he would be good to get some tips from. And no one outside of Harry's direct friend group, except for Dumbledore and Snape, knew about his animagus form, and they wouldn't turn him in. Well, hopefully Snape wouldn't. If Umbridge caught him, he was a dog. She would just kick him out of the castle. If she did something more drastic, Harry could protect him. He slowly nodded. Yeah, I think I could, but maybe after the winter holidays. I'd like us to get settled first and make sure our room is safe. Sirius looked happier than Harry had ever seen him, causing his Dementor side to react some, but the teen pushed it down forcefully. Brilliant! You're coming to Grimmauld for Christmas, right? I can think of some good spells for you guys to learn. This is epic! Harry... yeah! That would be great, Sirius. Harry smiled at him kindly. I'm looking forward to Christmas with you all. You at the house. You know, I think it's lovely, unlike some other people I know. Sirius shot him a glare, but brushed it off. Hey, speaking of what you do to my elf. What, creature? I never even talked to him. Harry responded in surprise. What happened? Sirius shrugged and unwrapped yet another chocolate frog. He cleans the room you stayed in at least once a week, unlike anywhere else in the house. I even saw him put up dead flowers in a vase by your bed a few days ago. If anyone mentions your name, he gets really quiet and looks like he's just seen a boggart or something. Harry's eyes almost got a bit misty at the elf putting up dead flowers by his bed. The best flowers in his inner Dementor. Was to be believed. I really don't know, Sirius. Harry said honestly. He figured the elf knew what he was, but his actions were strange regardless. I'll try to corner him and ask him about it over the break, yeah? Sirius grinned and gave Harry the rest of his half-eaten frog. Harry frowned at it, but saw how happy Sirius was to share. With an internal grimace, he ate the other half. I think my mail's being screened. Do you know of any other way we can talk? Harry asked, swallowing the tasteless chocolate. Sirius thought for a minute before smiling wider. There are mirrors! James and I used to talk to each other when we were in separate detentions. I need to find them, but yeah, they must be in the house somewhere. That would be great. I could see you then too. Harry smiled at the broken man fondly. That would be great. Send it with a post owl and ward the package so that only I can open it when you find them, okay? All right, pup. Now tell me about this Luna girl. Dobby! Harry called out in a screech at around 1 a.m. after the Hogsmeade weekend. With a pop, the house elf was jumping up and down in front of the Dementor that was hovering in the library. Harry Potter, sirs! How may Dobby help you? Do you happen to know of a room that over a dozen people could meet in and practice spells without getting caught by Umbridge? Harry asked in as quiet of screeches as possible. Dobby thought for a minute. Just evil toad woman or anyone? Everyone? He asked in contemplation. Harry chuckled at Dobby's description. Yeah, actually everyone who isn't invited would be good. We don't have a sponsor like the other club I'm in. Dobby smiled. Professor Potions Master, good sponsor. He asks elves for the best snacks for students. Something tells me he wouldn't be excited to sponsor this club, though. Any ideas? Harry smiled. He had noticed the snacks were quite good for those who actually liked food, that is, or blood, or crickets, or caviar surprisingly. I knows the room! Dobby excitedly grabbed Harry's skeletal hand and pulled the hovering Dementor behind him. Dobby knows the come and go room! All elves use room occasionally. They ended up by the portrait of a man trying to teach trolls ballet. Harry Potter walks 3 times and thinks of what he wants, Dobby mentioned for Harry to pace by the portrait.
Okay, Dobby.
If Harry would have an eyebrow raised and a speculative look on his face if he had eyebrows or a face. He did what he was told, though, and gasped as a door appeared on the wall. Dobby clapped his hands and rushed the door to open. Yes, this works! He nodded happily.
Merlin, Morgana, and Mordred.
Harry breathed out in surprise. It was perfect. Harry Potter just needs to think that no one finds it when he asks for the room. Dobby continued explaining as he checked out the dueling platform, dummies to practice on, pillows for soft landings, and mirrors to see what was going on.
Thanks, Dobby.
Harry smiled and pulled out his lip balm, a habit that was starting to cross over even to when he wasn't Jamie.
This really is perfect. Now I just need a lesson plan.
Harry Potter will be the bestest teacher, the elf assured him as they made way to leave the room. Harry stopped at the door and cocked his hooded head. There was something in the room, something like the locket that was calling to him. It was so faint he eventually brushed it off and followed his friend out the room.
You guys need any help in the kitchen, Dobby?
Harry asked, wanting something to do. It was a little boring wandering around alone every night.
I'm a pretty good cook and not above washing dishes.
Yes, Harry Potter, help! Dobby grabbed his hand once more. He talks to Dobby and Winky while they work.
But that's not...
Harry sighed and gave up as he was pulled through the air behind the now running house elf like some kind of Dementor balloon. It was kind of fun. Jamie was definitely sick. The first meeting of the Dumbledore's Army Club was a huge success as they learned the disarming charm. Hedwig was doing great. Dobby and Winky were kidnapping Harry at night to hang out in the kitchens at least once a week. Remedial Potions was relaxing after long days of people thinking he was an insane liar, and Umbridge was more and more evil by the day. Also, Jamie's hand was without a doubt infected. This time, as Harry began writing lines with the blood quill, he fumed with the certainty that his detention was completely unwarranted. Not that any of them were, but Umbridge just didn't like the way he looked this time, and that was the excuse for the detention. He felt feverish and his inflamed hand had hurt even before he started writing. Now it was on fire. He felt like he was betraying Jamie. Yes, Jamie was him, but also not. It was hard to think of the soulless body as an extension of him when it just felt so not him. He felt like he were hurting Hedwig when he hurt Jamie, and that made him warm with anger. Actually, it made him hot. Actually, he was hot. After being freezing cold for so long, Harry was confused why he was suddenly stifling in the room. Oh no, he finally thought in a dread as he realized he didn't have any hold on his aura at all anymore. Afraid at what he was going to find, Harry put down the quill and slowly looked up from his parchment. He sighed and kicked himself as he took in the sight of Professor Umbridge cowering in a ball behind her desk with tears streaming from her eyes. Shit, he mumbled. Okay, so he didn't feel bad for her at all, but as soon as she recovered, she was going to know something was wrong with him. Hopefully she recovered. Harry also felt wonderfully full at this moment, so she probably wasn't doing so well. He had to get help in covering this up. Harry thought as quickly as he could. Professor McGonagall had a history of not believing him, so he didn't even want to try her. He quickly discounted the headmaster as well. He was certain he'd be expelled for attacking a teacher, even if it was intentional and very deserved. Madame Pomfrey still didn't know what he was, or that he was even a magical creature. Snape was his only hope, and he really hated that thought. The Dementor took off at a run towards the dungeon and Snape's office, praying he was in there. Luckily, Harry caught a glimpse of long black hair as he skidded to a stop in the potions professor's doorway.
I need help.
He gasped out, trying to catch his breath and clear the lightheadedness that was coming from his sickness. Snape looked up and to his credit stood and grabbed his cloak to help, seeing that something must be really wrong.
What did you do?
Okay, well, he was still a chit.
Umbridge, I didn't mean to.
Harry gasped out and motioned back to the way he came. In 2 strides, Snape was at the door, grasping Harry's bleeding hand.
Blood.
He commented simply as he held up the hand to get a better look.
Yes, I'm bleeding, and it's probably infected, so please restrain yourself from eating me and help!
Harry motioned with his other hand in frustration, not concerned at all about the vampire. He was certain in a fight between the Dementor and the vampire, the Dementor would win every time. Snape sneered at him. I was only remarking that I smelled blood and you were injured. I take it you fed from Umbridge after she injured you. That looks like the work of a blood quill. He remarked with a strong wave of righteous anger, sweeping over Harry that he was surprised to feel directed at not at him but Umbridge. Harry was stunned. How did Snape figure out what he was?
Never mind. You need to help her.
He pulled his injured hand out of Snape's grasp. Snape grabbed a few potion vials from a shelf and swept off the door behind the jogging Harry, and Harry frowned, upset that he had to jog to keep up with Snape, when Snape was only walking quickly. Jamie really was short. They reached the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom where Umbridge was still curled up on the floor crying. Actually, Harry ran into Snape, who had suddenly stopped and was studying the woman with a mask of indifference on his face. Harry distinctively felt confusion and worry from him, though.
Sorry,
Harry mumbled, but the man didn't seem to notice. Snape quickly waved his wand, casting a nonverbal spell. She's not anemic, he remarked, and put the vials he had picked up from his office in one of the pockets of his robes. Why is she not anemic? He turned and asked Harry with a raise of one eyebrow.
Why would she be? I think if you just obliviate her and maybe give her some chocolate, she'll be fine. I've never tried a memory charm before and didn't want to chance turning her into Lockhart as much as she may deserve it.
Why would she be anemic? Harry asked in confusion while he explained why he had gone to Snape for help. The vampire studied him like a specimen. He was deciding to use a potion or not.
You are not a vampire?
Harry's eyes widened and he coughed in surprise.
You thought I was a vampire?
He was beyond relief. The man was so far off base with his guess.
Apparently you are not.
Snape frowned sternly at the Dementor in front of him.
Okay, Potter. Now this is the time I ask, and you answer. What exactly are you?
Chapter 9. The gooey filling is Dementor. Harry's eyes widened and he coughed in surprise.
You thought I was a vampire?
He was beyond relief. The man was so far off base with his guess. Apparently not. Snape frowned sternly at the Dementor in front of him.
Okay, Potter.
Now is the time I ask, and you answer. What exactly are you? Harry looked between Snape, Umbridge, and the door, hoping for some means of escape. Trying to think clearly, he realized they needed to prioritize their actions.
Professor, this is more than a 1-minute explanation.
He almost pleaded with Snape to understand.
We should really handle Umbridge before she comes around, and then we can talk about me. I'm positive if you can obliviate the lost hour from her memory, she should be fine. What I did was more mental than physical.
Snape frowned. He seemed to be trying to figure out what creature Harry was and coming up blank. This is highly illegal, you know. He sneered in distaste. Harry wasn't sure if it was towards him or the professor, as he took a couple steps towards Umbridge.
Says the former Death Eater.
Harry mumbled under his breath, forgetting Snape had vampire hearing. He tried to look apologetic when the man shot him a scathing look. I could let you handle this on your own, you know. Snape raised an eyebrow in warning. I'm sure you would cause a political nightmare, though, if I did leave it to you, entitled just like your father. Snape added on his own mumble at the end. Harry bit his tongue, feeling too sick to get into it with the greasy chit at the moment.
Sorry,
he said unapologetically. The vampire ignored him and gave a flick of his wand.
Accio blood quills,
he called out, and the one blood quill on the blood-stained student's desk floated to him, as well as a second quill from a drawer in Umbridge's desk. Snape put both in his pocket before turning to the blubbering woman on the floor. Obliviate, he cast as Umbridge became quiet and her eyes unfocused. Your detention with Potter went as you expected. He left just before curfew and you cleaned everything up before retiring for the night. With a quick skirtify at the desk, Snape swept over to Harry and pushed him out of the classroom before Umbridge could come to.
My office, now.
The professor growled and continued to push Harry through the hallways.
Why did you think I was a vampire, sir?
Harry asked as he stumbled along in front of his professor's graceful stride. That should have been a clue in itself that he wasn't a vampire. There are very few creatures you can be turned into and not born as Potter. Snape scowled, obviously irritated that he was wrong. Of the available options, vampires seem the most fitting since light creatures have developed a distaste for you. Though I have never seen the severe reaction you've been getting before. Also, you have been drawn to darker locations like Remold and the dungeons. Though I am a born vampire, it is possible to be turned into one instead. I admit not everything fit, but I'm at a loss for what creature you could be. I expect to be filled with incompletely momentarily.
Okay.
The Dementor grumbled, really not looking forward for the impending conversation. Harry was about ready to just give up on consciousness and pass out when they reached the potion professor's office in the dungeons once more. He figured he must look terrible because when the vampire rounded on him to demand answers, he instead paused and cast a diagnostic spell at the student. After the spell, Snape pushed Harry into an uncomfortable chair. Harry was getting sick and tired of being manhandled, as well as just plain sick and tired. Before he could protest, though, Snape stood in front of him and took his hand in with a quick jerk. Healing first. He sneered as he intensely studied the infected writing on the swollen hand.
Fine with me.
Harry grumbled, really not wanting to ever get to having to explain what he has, or what he was. The potion's master prodded the hand with his wand slightly, causing Harry to suck in a breath in a hiss of pain. "What have you been putting on it?" he asked clinically. "Essence of Myrtlap." Harry glared at him, not thinking the prodding was exactly necessary. Snape just nodded until a look of disgust washed over his face and disappeared just as quickly. "All right, Potter." Snape dropped Harry's hand like some sort of slimy potion specimen and proceeded in a businesslike tone. "You've been consistently using a cursed artifact, so the dark magic has built up in your hand." "It wasn't my fault," Harry grumbled with a glare. "Be it that as it may, the essence of Myrtlap, or even Dittany at this point, will work little better than Muggle antibiotics cream, since it is also fighting off the dark magic," Snape explained as he sat on the edge of his desk and stared at Harry. "That still means it's working though, right?" Harry asked with a questioning look. "You took the quills away from her, so it'll have time to heal now." Snape nodded slowly. "Yes, however, your hand is severely infected. You will need to stay a couple days in the infirmary, as the infection has also caused you a fever, and it is making you very ill." Harry groaned in distress. He had the A to teach, and the first Quidditch match against Slytherin was in a couple days. "You just don't want me to play against Slytherin," he pouted, perhaps not very maturely, but he'd just been tortured, so he deserved a bit of a break. The professor smirked at him, but then waved a hand dismissively. "There is, however, another option. One you may find distasteful, which would keep you from needing to spend any time in the infirmary." "Yes, I'll take that one," Harry exclaimed quickly. "What is it?" Snape's face went into his teacher mode of explaining something. "I know your defense against the dark arts instruction has been abysmal, so I assume you know nothing of vampires, considering that you apparently aren't one." The Dementor glared at Snape, but he couldn't really defend their instructors. Besides Remus, which he made a mental note to ask about at some point, why would Snape have outed him as if he was a vampire himself? Anyways, I actually looked up vampires, if you must know. Good. Then you know that in order to maintain our secrecy, when we feed from humans, we have evolved strong pain-relieving and healing properties in our saliva. The human must not feel the pain, and we cannot leave a mark if we wish to remain hidden," Snape explained as if he were lecturing on a new potion. "That, combined with a mild memory charm, has ensured that we are never caught by our prey." It took Harry a minute before the professor was offering finally sank in. Harry's face mirrored Snape's quick look of disgust from earlier, which he now understood and stayed here. "Are you actually saying you want to lick my hand?" Sorry. Snape's face twisted into a sneer. "Potter, there are few things in this world I wish to do less than lick your hand. However, yes, that is the solution to the issue. I can easily clear up the infection and begin the healing process better than any of my potions, since I am a dark creature and a dark magic infection means little to the healing properties I possess." The The Dementor looked like he had just seen Voldemort come out of the cauldron in the graveyard once more in his expression.
That's just unsanitary.
The vampire sighed in exasperation. If Mr. Weasley licked your hand, then yes, it would be unsanitary. But he isn't a vampire. I have already explained the healing properties. Make your decision. I will be ecstatic to hand you off to Madame Pomfrey and not have to deal with you or taste the loathsome Potter blood. I'm not sure Malfoy or Montag will rejoice to hear Gryffindor will be playing a reserve player as seer in the upcoming match as well. Harry's nose crinkled in disgust still, but he slowly held out his hand. He really did feel terrible.
Oh, I'm sure I taste wonderful, he groaned. Just do it, I can watch.
Harry did in fact close his eyes and turn his head away as Snape sighed and took his hand once more. Almost immediately the stinging subsided and the throbbing stopped.
Hey! Hey!
Harry exclaimed as he opened his eyes to see Snape glaring at him with the look of disgust and disdain on his face.
That's awesome!
The swelling in his hand was visibly going down, and it looked like the cuts were days old instead of just from a few hours before.
Let's never do that again, Potter.
Snide grimaced as he summoned a glass of water from somewhere in the office and downed the whole thing.
Thank you.
Harry was still looking at his hand in awe.
You know, I wish I was a vampire if I could do that.
Snape swore under his breath as he looked at the clock on his wall. We need to go to the headmaster now. There's only a little over an hour before the order meeting tonight.
What?
Harry looked at his professor in betrayal.
No, we can't go to Dumbledore.
For Umbridge to report the blood quill, Snape said slowly as if talking to a child. There are Aurors in the order, and they may be able to find a way to get her out of the school if they know what's happening and before she branches out to first years.
Oh!
Harry blanched, not having considered that she may move on to torturing the younger students or any other students besides himself.
Right, yeah.
Snape glared at him warningly. We will be coming back here after, and you will be telling me all about what you are. I am allowed to be fashionably late to the order meeting, unlike the headmaster.
Right.
Harry nodded, secretly vowing to find some way of getting out of that by the end of the meeting with the headmaster. They hurried in silence to the headmaster's office, Harry marveling the whole way just how much better his hand felt. He really wanted to find a minute to go through to thoroughly wash it though, but he was certain Snape wouldn't take it well if he asked. Jawbreakers, Snape growled in disgust at the stone gargoyle guarding the office. Harry hurried up the stairs behind the professor, who seemed to glide soundlessly as he walked as much as Harry did when he was outside of Jamie.
Ah, Severus and Harry! How can I help you both?
Dumbledore turned questioning eyes up to them with the papers on his desk.
Umbridge has to go.
Snape growled, obviously trying to push down his anger once more.
I admit, she's not a pleasant person and not the best teacher, but what has she done to warrant this visit after curfew, I might add?
The headmaster seemed happy to see Harry and Severus together, even if he was confused about the reason.
Albus.
Snape visibly took a deep breath and pulled the quill from out of his robe pocket. throwing them onto the headmaster's desk. "She's been using a blood quill to torture students." It took a couple heartbeats, but all of a sudden, the pressure in the room built up, causing Harry's ears to pop. Dumbledore completely shed the image of a kindly grandfather and stood staring at the quills, looking like an avenging angel of death.
"Who?"
Dumbledore asked simply as he turned burning eyes towards Harry. "Who else?" Snape sneered with an elegant wave towards his companion. Harry, for his part, could completely believe this was the person that Voldemort feared most as he took a step back and tried to keep himself from hiding behind Snape's robes.
"May I see your hand, Harry?"
The old man reached out, visibly trying to keep his voice calming and not dripping with anger.
Well, the professor healed me up pretty good."
Harry shuffled forward nervously and held out his hand for the headmaster.
"Thank you, Severus,"
Dumbledore said quietly and as he inspected Harry's hand.
It has already started to scar. She must have been doing this for a while,"
He said more as a question than a statement. Harry just nodded and hurried back when his hand was returned to him.
What have you already done to her, What have you already done to her, my boy?"
he asked Snape with a look that promised no rebuke, no matter what the answer was. "I only took the quills, and circumstances dictated that she needed to be obliterated at the end of Professor Potter's detention, so she would not blame the theft on him," the vampire explained, expertly skirting why she was really needed to be obliterated. Dumbledore nodded and continued to glower.
"So, she doesn't know they are gone yet. That will give us some time, since Hogwarts wards will not allow illegal torture devices to be flown in with the post. She'll need to go in person to get replacements."
"It may be best to get Shacklebolt and Tonks involved," Severus suggested.
"Indeed,"
Dumbledore said contemplatively. His face cleared some as he took in Harry's concerned expression.
"Sit, Harry. I must apologize. I've completely lost my manners. Would you like a lemon drop?" No, sir."
Harry almost laughed at the change in atmosphere. He did sit in the armchair besides where the potion master sat as well. After they were both seated, the headmaster sat at his desk once more.
"I'm so sorry, Harry. I knew she was unpleasant, but I had no idea she would do something on this level of atrocity."
Harry shrugged. Honestly, he'd had worse, and that wasn't even mentioning getting his soul sucked out of his body.
I'm fine now. Professor Snape healed me up."
Snape sneered at Harry, brushing off what happened, but since it seemed the headmaster didn't believe it was nothing either, the man let it drop.
"Harry, the fact remains that this never should have happened to you. Trust me, I'll do my best to get this rectified before she can replace the quills."
Dumbledore assured him.
"I lack the political influence I used to have, but I'm not without resources."
Harry nodded, but wasn't going to hold his breath. He'd believe it when it was handled when the woman was effectively moved out of the castle and not before.
"Yes, sir,"
was all he mumbled, though as he pulled out his habitual tube of lip balm and applied it unconsciously.
Since you are both here, I had a proposition for you two I had meant to bring up shortly."
Dumbledore changed the subject, his eyes twinkling madly, which caused Harry and Snape both to be suspicious of the proposition.
"I think It would serve Harry well to learn occlumency from you, Severus.
Harry just looked confused, and Snape immediately started protesting.
That is a terrible idea, Albus.
He was talking over Dumbledore's continued explanation about what occlumency was. It's not like the Dark Lord can get into his head anyway. You're only setting me up to be killed later if I teach him and the Dark Lord finds out. Dumbledore immediately quieted and looked confused.
What do you mean? Voldemort can't into Harry's head. I haven't had any dreams or visions at all terms, sir.
Harry added in, not really sure what they were talking about.
Albus, I already told you this.
Snape sighed in exhaustion. I told you the Dark Lord was trying to find a way to influence Potter's mind.
Yes, and teach the occlumency lessons.
Dumbledore still looked confused. If he was able to get into Potter's mind through legilimency, he'd already have done it. He's a master legilimens. Snape growled. He's looking for ways because he can't get into the boy's thick head. Both men glared at each other, seeing their mistakes in communication.
He can't get into Harry's head?
Dumbledore asked in clarification, an amazed look on his face.
But there is a connection. He created it through the killing curse, rebounding and evidenced by Harry's knowledge of Parseltongue. Harry was having visions last year as well. A connection like that doesn't just go away.
Harry was positive they had forgotten he was in the room at this point, as he watched the back and forth. Regardless, the boy is blocking him somehow. Snape shrugged in a very un-Snape-like fashion. The man must be tired. None of the Death Eaters have been able to help either. He's not been pleasant recently. Harry snorted at this, though neither man paid him any attention. Dumbledore seemed to be deep in contemplation.
It may be best to send Harry to his relatives for the holidays instead of Grimmauld. There will be less people for him to come into contact with, and much more security than the castle as well. It would be a good opportunity for Tom to try something.
Now things were just spiraling in Harry's opinion, and this train of thought was unacceptable.
No!
He said loudly and clearly, so the two would realize he was still in the room and capable of making decisions for himself.
But my boy!
Dumbledore turned his blue eyes on the Dementor.
If you say it's for my own safety, I may scream.
Harry glowered at the man.
First of all, there is a 100% chance my relatives will refuse to allow me back for the holidays. That was always their condition for allowing me to go to school, that they only have to deal with me over the summers. Honestly, I plan to deal with this later, but there's also around a 90% chance they won't allow me back this summer, coupled with 10% chance they will but either try to kill me in my sleep or kick me out onto the streets to be homeless. The Dursleys are no longer an option.
Dumbledore and Snape both stared at him.
What did you do?
No.
What did you do, Potter?
Snape sneered.
What were you just talking about in your office moments ago?
Harry narrowed his eyes at the man, who effectively glowered back, but seemed to understand what must have happened.
They always hated me from the minute they were forced to take me in. Now they fear me. If I'm to be killed in my sleep, I'd rather Voldemort do it than Uncle Vernon. At least then I'd have a better shot at not being persecuted for retaliation.
Snape seemed completely stunned, while Dumbledore just looked like he didn't believe Harry, which, coupled with the fact that the entire magical...
The fuck?
Snape seemed completely stunned, while Dumbledore just looked like he didn't believe Harry, which, coupled with the fact that the entire magical community didn't believe him at the moment, made Harry almost lose his grasp on his aura once again.
Please explain what happened this past summer. I'm sure it's not as bad as you believe it to be.
Dumbledore tried to soothe him, but Harry wasn't having it.
The connection you have with Tom will not just go away. He'll find out how to open it once more, or he'll send someone to reach you. They're your family. That's important.
Tell that to them! Harry exploded. Grimmauld is teeming with Order members. Why wouldn't I be safe there?
It's not that you wouldn't be safe, but you'd be safer behind the blood warts.
Dumbledore continued to protest. Albus, maybe staying with the mutt isn't such a horrible idea. Snape added in, realizing that Harry was on the verge of snapping.
And it's not like I wasn't already attacked at the Dursleys and sort of killed, the Dementor exclaimed. Harry died over the summer and no one noticed. Where was that protection when I actually needed it?
The room got deadly quiet as Harry ranted. Looking at both men, he slapped a hand over his mouth, wishing with every fibre of his being he could take back his last couple sentences.
I'm just being overdramatic.
Harry tried to brush off.
Ignore me, I'm fine.
He continued before trying to curl in on himself. Snape shook his head ruefully. Harry wasn't going to get himself out of this one. Dumbledore pinned the boy with a piercing glare.
Who are you? What happened to Harry Potter?
He asked, the pressure rising once more in the room.
I am Harry!
Harry yelled again, tired of all the secrecy and no one believing him. Just tell us what happened, Potter, Snape said calmly, trying to defuse the situation.
Yes, I believe that's best.
Dumbledore continued to look dangerously at the teen in front of him.
I should probably start with the fact that I can't talk to snakes anymore.
Harry rubbed his hands up and down his cold arms. He'd tried to open his locket many times and finally determined it must be sealed in Parseltongue, which he seemed to no longer be able to access. Dumbledore looked almost comically shocked while Snape gave a deep sigh. I don't believe that's the best place to start. Try from the beginning. The Gryffindor looked around the room, hoping for an escape, but even Fawkes wasn't currently present to be an ally. Honestly, with his luck and with magical creatures, it was more likely Hawkes would attack him. Anyway, seeing none, he finally steeled himself to tell everything.
Well, I guess I should start with my first kiss then.
Snape rolled his eyes. Spare us the teenage hormones and skip to the important parts. We don't have all evening to cater to your melodrama. Dumbledore cleared his throat awkwardly.
Yes, my boy, that made it be the best. Well, my first kiss was with a Dementor.
Harry sneered at the vampire, secretly loving the melodrama, according to Snape, as both professors gasped.
But Merlin!
Snape seemed to be putting everything together, from Harry's odd behavior to what had happened with Umbridge.
That's just not possible! I think you must explain that more, Harry.
Dumbledore's mind seemed to be thinking similar thoughts to Snape's.
It's probably best if I were to just show you.
Harry sighed and got more comfortable in his chair.
Professor.
He looked to Snape.
Would you catch Jamie if he falls over, please? I don't want him to get hurt any more than what he's already been through.
Jamie? Snape asked in confusion.
It's what I call my Harry suit.
The Dementor explained.
It's what's left over from me from the me from before. He's a bit like my pet, I guess. Look, you'll understand in a minute.
Harry finished as he continued to see confused looks turned his way. Harry took a deep breath and shot one last pleading look at Dumbledore's way before releasing Jamie and floating up from the body. Before he could blink, if he had eyes, Snape was standing with his wand trained on the Dementor, but Dumbledore just looked at him like he'd been delivered a terminal prognosis from a healer. "I don't feel his aura and the room hasn't gotten any colder," Snape remarked as he glared at the creature. "Are you sure that's Potter? Frankly, are we sure that's a Dementor?" Harry really wished he could roll his eyes, but instead impatiently motioned to Jamie, who was slumping over and about to fall off the chair. The potions professor automatically reached a hand and straightened the soulless teen back up onto the chair. At that, Dumbledore finally stood and started casting diagnostic charms at Jamie.
He seems to be asleep,"
the headmaster remarked. Snape joined him in casting diagnostic charms, while the Dementor was ignored in the corner. "His health appears to be good," the professor commented.
"A bit anemic, though,"
Dumbledore added. "That would be the blood quill." Snape nodded. Harry cursed with his Dementor vocal cords as he didn't appreciate being ignored. Yes, Jamie was quite the anomaly, but he was Harry and Jamie was just the shell. They seemed less than concerned about his current state of being and more concerned about the Harry suit. While Dumbledore and Snape muttered together about what might have happened, and not including Harry, he finally had enough.
"Dobby!"
Harry called out in a screech, making both men jump. The house elf popped into the office, causing another jump of surprise from the men. Dobby's eyes widened as he took in the situation. "How can Dobby's help you, Harry Potter, sirs?" Harry sighed in relief as he unconsciously pulled out the tube of lip balm he kept in his magical Dementor robes next and applied it. He crossed his arms and tried to glare at the men who were sending a wave of shocked amusement his direction.
"Dobby, would you mind acting as translator for me for just a few minutes?"
"Yes, sirs. Dobby's going to translate," the house elf told the older men.
You can understand him, Dobby? A Dementor?"
Dumbledore asked in amazement. "House elves understand all languages, Headmaster Dumbledore, sir," Dobby explained simply.
"Great! Dobby, would you tell those two prats that I'd like to be included in this conversation and that I'm still bloody well a person even if I'm a Dementor?" Harry angrily screeched at the two.
He was less annoying as the brat. Snape winced as the screeches grated on his vampire ears. Dobby glared at him. "Harry Potter, sir, says he is—" "Sirs, I can't say that." Dobby looked at him with a wave of embarrassment. Harry crossed his arms and tried to glare at the house elf next. The little elf sighed and turned back to the men. "Fine, Harry Potter, sir, says that he's still bloody well a person, even if he's a Dementor and wants to be included in this conversation."
"I'm sorry, my boy." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled in amusement. "We just got so caught up in the fact that your body was still alive without a soul in it. Normally they would have died by now if you were attacked over the summer." Harry nodded his hooded head. "Dobby, tell them I'm taking really good care of Jamie. I make him eat and he gets enough exercise throughout the day that when I leave him at night he naturally falls asleep. Tell them I'm taking better care of him than anyone else ever has."
"Yes, Dobby, no, sirs." The elf nodded and patted Harry approvingly on his bony elbow. "Harry Potter takes good care of Jamie. He makes him eat and he leaves him to sleep at night. He's much better at taken care of now than before. Dobby and Winky thinks Harry Potter not very healthy before this year, but Jamie much healthier now. New Harry still needs to take care of himself, though. Dobby sent a glare up at the Dementor.
What do you do at night then if you leave Jamie, right? I don't believe Dementors sleep.
The headmaster asked, looking slightly less like his favorite student was dead and gone. It seemed the fact that Harry was still actually there was sinking in. The Dementor shrugged and sent a long series of screeches to Dobby. The elf nodded and turned to translate. Dementors don't sleep. Harry does homework, researches what happened to him, and spends time with Hedwig, Dobby and Winky. He also leaves the castle to release his aura some. It makes him very cold and cranky to keeps it pulled back in all the times.
There is a curfew, Mr. Potter.
Snape sneered with less venom than normal.
One which you can't exactly expect him to follow if he doesn't sleep.
Dumbledore cut him off as he ran a hand down his long beard. Another long rant of angry screeches showed Harry's displeasure. Dobby continued to translate, though. Harry Potter says that he's been fine and no one has caught him besides that evil B-word woman did to his hand. He stayed out of troubles and is doing better in classes. Dobby stopped and turned questioning eyes to Harry. Harry Potter, sir, what did B-word woman do to your hand? Harry motioned to Jamie's hand and Dobby walked over to look at it. Harry sent a shrug to Dumbledore and Snape, clearly communicating that Dobby took some liberties with his translation. Winky! Dobby yelled out in more anger than any of them had ever seen a house elf, and they had all met Creature. A loud pop sounded in the room, and the tiny female house elf appeared in their midst. Winky had once been in a terrible shape after being fired from her former position in Mr. Crouch family. However, after a year of Dobby's optimism and feeling needed by the students, she was thriving in her new environment. Dobby! Was all she got out before the other elf pulled her over and showed her Jamie's hand. Dumbledore actually took a step back as both house elves turned accusing eyes on him. What you going to do about this? Winky asked slowly, with a glower as a wave of magic crackled around the room, equal but different to the power exhibited by Dumbledore before.
I am going to handle it, I assure you, Winky,
the headmaster said emphatically. See you do, or Winky will! The elf threatened before popping out of the room once more.
Now I know why you threatened me with Winky,
Harry said quietly to Dobby, who nodded and hugged him around the middle, sad that he had been injured.
Dobby, please ask them if they know what happened to me and why I'm a Dementor now.
After Dobby translated, Dumbledore and Snape both shook their heads in confusion.
I've never heard of this happening,
Snape told them both.
I haven't either,
Dumbledore added.
I must admit that my knowledge of Dementors is limited. I never figured out for certain why they were so attracted to you in your third year either. It would have helped if I knew the house elves could translate. This seems unprecedented, though.
Harry nodded.
That's what I've decided from the books I've read,
he told them through Dobby.
I'll do some research myself,
the headmaster offered.
I hate to say it, but it may be a good idea to talk to a Dementor, my boy. I doubt they can do anything more to you now that your soul is no longer in your body.
That would necessitate him going to Azkaban. Snape raised an eyebrow in disbelief.
Personally, I refuse to accompany him if that is your next misguided suggestion. It was not,
Dumbledore assured his wife.
I will go with him myself if he should decide to go, but it's Harry's decision.
Harry looked between the two and sighed.
Everything kept coming back around to that. He would eventually need to talk to Dementor. I'll think about it,
was the best he could offer.
I'm not going back to the Dursleys, though. I didn't have the best control over my aura when this first happened to me, and I think they reached their fear limit by the end of the summer. Is Sirius affected by your presence?
Dumbledore asked with a nod, understanding a little more. Harry shook his head.
I got my aura under control before I left Surrey. It's bloody uncomfortable for me, but Sirius doesn't seem affected.
Harry drifted back towards Jamie and picked up the body once more. He felt better rested and less unwell than he had when they had entered the office, but still groggy.
Headmaster, you aren't going to tell anyone, are you? Harry asked with a grimace, especially Sirius.
Dumbledore sighed and looked sadly at the Harry-coated Dementor in front of him.
Harry, I think it's best that as few people as possible know this, especially Sirius. Absolutely.
Harry nodded emphatically. Snape just snorted but seemed to be in agreement, so that's how Harry took it in.
It's almost Jamie's bedtime, and you two have an order meeting, right?
Harry prompted.
Yes, right.
Dumbledore nodded and seemed to snap out of his somber thought.
Severus, I think based on this new information, we can discontinue the guard duty at the Ministry. I only had them posted to keep Voldemort from luring Harry into a trap. If he can't access Harry's mind, and well, since Harry is now a Dementor, I don't see the point. If Voldemort goes himself, one Order member will make no difference.
Albus, you know I never agreed to the guard detail was necessary in the first place. Snape glared.
So don't get lured into any traps at the Ministry. Got it.
Harry grinned at them both.
What's at the Ministry? That's a conversation for another time. It is well past curfew now.
Dumbledore smiled at him with his eyes twinkling once more.
And Harry, I'm so sorry for what you've been through. But I'm glad you're handling it so well. You truly are a remarkable young man.
Harry shrugged in embarrassment.
I have good days and bad days. With the blood quills gone, maybe there will be more good days now.
Dumbledore looked at him with sad, regretful eyes.
Dobby, would you be so kind as to escort Mr. Potter to Gryffindor Tower?
Yes, there's Headmaster Dumbledore, sir. Dobby gave him a little salute and pulled Harry towards the door, which was much harder to do now when he wasn't floating.
I'll hold you to that future conversation, sir,
Harry called back as a pushy elf shut the door behind them.
Well, that went better than expected,
he commented to Dobby, fully aware the men were still talking about him back in the office and very curious about it. Harry Potter is spending tonight with Dobby and Winky in the kitchens, he ordered.
Yes, sir, Mr. Dobby, sir.
Harry smiled at him, getting the elf to laugh as they continued to the tower.
Hello and welcome again, my friends. Wow. It's been a couple weeks already. I didn't have any idea what to say in the last couple videos after I was done with the recording. Most of the time it was because I was pre-recording, just as I was today. This is past Coul from roughly 3 weeks ago, I'd say. Just any rustling in the last few videos was Suna, the little sassy cat, or the dogs. And
I have no idea what to say. I just wanted to let you know I'm fine. And let's just say, if you like the content, please consider liking and subscribing. It would help a lot. Let's head forward in reaching a goal of maybe 50 subscribers. I mean, I wouldn't have anything against it being a K behind it, but hey, let's not be hasty. Have a nice time, any day of the week, any time of the day you are. Take care of yourself, get something to drink and eat. Don't forget your meds if you need any. And kick the bullies for me, alright? See ya!